Can we talk about the house fire?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. One of the best things that happened in my life.
2 years ago, right?
Yeah.
You just said one of the best things that happened in your life.
Oh, my gosh. Fabulous. I knew it on the day that I came back.
You did.
I did. I don't know that my wife would necessarily agree with this.
You know, I had a different perspective as a house. I came home to my house fire. And in the seconds, you know, as you turn into your driveway and you realize, oh, my house is going to go, before my mind could formulate fears, I could see my children on the lawn. And at that point, you've had two things put in front of you, you know, like there's my house, there's my family. And they can't even exist on the same scale. So I was really we all just sat on the lawn and watched the house burn.
I just got done having nearly an hour and a half conversation with Shawn and Beth Dougherty, some wonderful friends of ours. They've written for Plain Values for many, many years. And I don't believe that we have ever had the deep conversation into family and the conversation around how they watch their life grow and build into the joy and contentment that they live in every day. These questions that you know, for some reason came to me as I was, you know, thinking and praying through this whole time, just provided a beautiful framework for a wonderful conversation around their family, around their house fire. If you enjoy learning about someone's history, about their family, about the way they think, about the way that they want to live, this one is a real treat. This episode of the Plain Values podcast is being sponsored by my friends at Azure Standard. My friend Spencer just told me about a new program that they have launched. It's called Around the Table. And Around the Table is this beautiful synergy between Azure and their food and their trucking and the local church. Here's how it works. You set up a drop, you choose a coordinator, you order your food, and you pick it up. And the church gets a small percentage back to put into any ministry that they want. It is a fantastic opportunity to encourage and help the churches get to know the people in their own backyards. I love it. It's wonderful. You can call Spencer at 971-200-8353. 971-200-8353. Or you can shoot him an email at aroundthetable@azurestandard.com and tell him Marlon sent you.
So hold my hand, think of me sweetly with a graveyard flower.
Let's jump right in with, were you guys both born in Ohio?
No, we're Southwest.
You're Southwest.
Yeah. So I was born in Lubbock, Texas.
I was born in Houston. So we're both Texans born.
Really?
Yeah.
And that's not something you just, you know, that's not casual. If you're a Texan born, you're... So we grew up in Texas and Oklahoma. We didn't come here till 1990.
I grew up mostly in Oklahoma.
Shawn was 30 when we came.
Yeah.
Okay. So what was life for you as kids in Texas and Oklahoma? Like, what were your parents like? Did you have a big family?
I had 5 brothers, and the thing that really... So I grew up really... we were just at a conference where we were talking about mom and dad, and my mom and dad were very much believers in the systems. Dad did not go to World War II because he had flat feet, but you know, that's that generation.
When you said systems, what does that mean?
The educational system, the medical system.
They belong to that generation for which the past had a lot of dark stuff in it. I mean, his dad was a kid during the Dust Bowl in Oklahoma, and they believed the story that came, especially after World War II, that says technology is going to relieve us from all these terrible things in our past. And Shawn's dad was a salesman for Eli Lilly, the drug company. And then he was chief pharmacist for St. Anthony Hospital in Oklahoma City. And he believed in drugs. He believed they were going to do what they said they did. So mom and dad, they were the best people on the planet.
Yeah.
But they weren't questioning.
No, they believed in the
systems.
educational system. So we were actually put in. We're Catholic, so we were put in Catholic school to begin with, and this was a hard time. Vatican II was a very hard time, and Oklahoma was particularly liberal. So they pulled us out of the Catholic schools because Dad would say, it's going to be easier for me to say that what you're hearing in the school isn't exactly right, as opposed, he did not want to contradict the church and perceived that if he said that what Father said wasn't accurate. But in any event, they generally, so we were put in public school. And they would say, they knew that there were things going on, drugs and things like that in the schools and stuff. But generally, they came from a background that believed in the medical systems and believed in the educational systems and believed in all that kind of stuff. I'm not sure exactly why we
Fell so far outside the box.
but we
didn't.
even early on we were doubting.
You're a thinker and I'm a contrarian. And that got us a long way. But we started out just as two people. And I think about 5 years ago, we realized, I know why we married one another. You were the only person I knew who was going to farm with me. Yeah. And I was the only person. So we knew we wanted to live on a farm. We knew we wanted that life. Both our grandfathers were farmers. We were very comfortable in the country food growing world. And we also knew we didn't want to be commercial farmers. We'd seen enough of that to see a lot of things wrong with it. But I think starting there and saying, our life's going to be different. Shawn started it by saying, first, I want always to have more time than money.
Really?
And that meant that we were going to do as many free or cheap things about our lives as we could. We were going to do for ourselves, not buy our solutions. And so that meant, it's why he chose to be an educator. He had his summers off. It didn't pay very well, but we didn't need it to do that. We just needed time. And then I think that you'll know this is true. I know some things about your life, so I think you'll know this is true. That when you begin to pursue one good, especially one that isn't the norm, I'm not sure how many really are the norm, but when you begin to pursue it single-mindedly, it leads you to a lot of other things, and you find that having taken that one step down the road less traveled, you're getting further and further from the road that's more traveled.
And I would say that one of our first steps in that was home birthing. So, that was an unusual choice.
It was.
At the time. And Beth had just met, we had some very, very good friends. And Beth was thinking, well, you explain what you were going to do about
I was
birth.
definitely, I belonged to the generation that heard, like unremitting pain for hours and hours and hours was what labor and delivery are like. And I wanted nothing to do with it. I was like, sign me up. I want a cesarean section. Wake me up a week later. I want no part in this. And about 3 days before we got married, some close friends showed up with their 2-day-old baby and their birthing story, and it had been a home birth, actually with Frida Miller of Bergen, Ohio. That's right. She had trained. Yeah. She was training in Grand Prairie, Texas, and so she was a student midwife, and our friends had gone to her. That's how we ended tied to Bergen in 1990 because we were having a baby, and there was Frida. But at the time, she had come back up here, and we had our first baby under another student. But it was the story. It was that instead of a picture of a couple who is just caught in the toils of how industry does babies and no choices, here's this story of a natural event that has its level of risk and heroism, not danger. We weren't looking at it because, wow, that's dangerous, let's do it. But all of a sudden, birth went from being a product that the industry sells us to something that was going to happen regardless, and we could do it by ourselves or we could do it with a trained layperson, and it was an adventure. And I would say that I think we always had a taste for adventure and not much of a taste for the conventional.
Yeah. And then that same couple, as we were heading toward homeschooling and things like that, she said, why in the world would I send my child to school just when it becomes helpful at home? So she homeschooled, and we said, well,
Yeah, this is a big shift.
and right, and then we're reflecting on, and it doesn't take very much to look at the medical system or the educational system or the financial system or any of these systems to say they're not working very well. The food system, the ag system, they're not working very well. And you can either go along with them or you can say, I think I can do this. I think I can do this better than they would want to do it. Plus, I really do think that their goals are so different from what our goals are. And our goals were, and I'm very pleased that my boys, they're the ones who are married.
You have daughters.
I know, but I'm talking about my boys who are married, the children who are married. They're all boys. And when they say, Dad, if there's anything that you taught us, is that family's the most important thing. And when family's the most important thing, you kind of have to jettison these other. What we need to do is be creating alternative everything. Alternative educational systems, alternative food systems, alternative medical systems, alternative. And we're finding that having been in those alternatives for a very long time, they are way better. Way better.
So I'm not going to let you off the hook with your childhood, your mom and dad, your siblings and all that, but I want to ask you guys a question before we get there. So Lisa, my wife, was a teacher in the local public system for 7 or 8 years, and we chose to homeschool our kids as well. Mm-hmm. And she felt a lot of, what in the world? What? Yes. You're a teacher. What are you doing?
Sure.
I'm sure that it was seen as betrayal.
She lost friendships. It put her through the mill.
Yeah.
You were a college professor, right?
Yes, I guess I was at the time. But
wasn't
most of these
professor for 25 years.
This is a Catholic institution, and I would say most of the faculty were homeschooling.
Really?
Yes.
Okay, now that I did not know, and then that makes a lot more sense.
Yeah.
Now, here's the follow-up question I was thinking of. You guys, one thing that I love about you guys, among the many, is that I don't think of Shawn and Beth and go, man, they are really, really good at one thing. You guys are wonderfully general. They're just on the farm and in life, I'm trying to think of how to ask this question because I want to just almost preach. I am so tired of the specialization of life. And you talk to this guy, well, I'm a surgeon, but I only operate on the left kidney and the fourth quadrant. And it's like, come on.
Right.
You know,
well, this is what Wendellberry goes on and on about, is that this specialization has really hampered us in being able to do things. So, no, when this generalist, yes, you're right. I would not say that
we're very much generous. In fact, don't examine us too closely on any specializations.
But what that means is that when we want to add on to the house, we do it. And we don't really know what we're doing, but we figure, and this is where if there's anything that came out of the homeschooling and the homesteading world for my children, is that they are problem solvers. Because they've seen me try down a road, and then they say, "Oh, Dad, let me help you here," and they're much better at all those things.
But you guys are okay admitting and saying, you know what, that didn't go so well, and actually failing in something and say, well, let's try it again, and you figure it out.
I think specialists end up having to depend on other people for 99% of their lives because they're specialists in their narrow band.
That's right.
And we wanted to have a life together with our children, growing food and keeping animals. So that's not specialization. But even more so, as you begin to try to, if you want to farm unconventionally and raise all your food, you have to be a reader of nature, of ecosystems. Talk about not specialized, right?
Huge variety.
Right. 30 billion or whatever it is, 3 billion living things in a teaspoon of soil. That's a really broad spectrum. And here we are trying to manage a big spectrum and all the things we wanted to eat and all the things we wanted to eat. Yeah. And I think it is good for your soul because it backs you out of the picture far enough to begin to read that this is how God made creation. His creation is beyond our understanding and oriented to our happiness and to our well-being. And I think it's part of why we're okay with Shawn and I, especially. Our kids are pretty good, decent specialists on some things. Each of them has at least a handful of skills they're very good at. But I've always been okay with our generalization and the fact that, like, I can make a decent loaf of dark brown, nutty bread, but I'm not a baker. I'm not a particularly talented cook. My daughters are better at a lot of things than I am. But that big picture of managing a whole ecosystem is so beautiful. I always wanted to prove, cheese making's a good example. Anybody can take clean raw milk and make a cheese, and it'll be good and wholesome and delicious. You won't necessarily win prizes with it, but was that the goal?
Right.
So
And
I
it's
think
healthy because you know where it comes from.
Oh, it's phenomenal. We
you
love
know
it.
where it
We eat
comes
it all
from,
the
right.
time. But
And the flip side of that is the specialist who we began to really question the knowledge of the specialist as they were trying to lead us. If we had done it with home birth, if we'd done it with home education, the specialist would not have chosen the paths that we chose. They would have said, oh, no, you're doing it totally wrong. And
I'm trying to remember the scientist I read recently, because we do a lot of research. I was reading a scientist, and he said, oh, you know who it was? I think it was Alan Williams, who's a grass grazing, but he's a geneticist. And I think he said, all scientific research is anecdotal. And what he meant was, it's all contextual. Yeah. If I take something out of its living system and I bring it over here and I test it, I can tell you what happened under those circumstances. But I no more have a fact about that thing than if I had observed it in its natural setting. In fact, less, because I took it out and I don't know what it will really do in its natural setting. And I feel as though knowledge is anecdotal, it's contextual. That's a safe place to start from anywhere. Shawn said to me, Shawn is the source of a lot of my logical statements. And he says, it's really helpful to start a statement with, well, in my experience, or that has not been my experience, because that's about the biggest factual statement we're able to make.
Right.
Mm-hmm.
And in nature and in farming, that's really true.
Well, that segues unbelievably well to my next thought. Again, just a small little complaint. I am so tired of everybody being so certain about everything.
Yes.
Everybody is so
when,
sure.
When I enter a conversation when some people are certain, I think, I'm bored already. And I'm not really interested in you preaching at me.
They're not even listening.
I'm very interested in us probing a question together. One of the things that happens when we get our friends together is so often we are probing interesting questions. What does it mean to make the Sunday Sabbath day holy? Mm-hmm. What does that mean? And I had that conversation with my kids recently. We had a little bit of a discussion. Is work okay on Sunday if it's work that I like to do?
Because it's not work to you.
That's right.
Or is it okay if I do your work and you do my work?
Right.
I'm not sure that's exploration so much as it is Jesuitical.
Yeah, that's right.
Justification.
That's right.
So now let's go back to your childhood and your family.
Well, you were talking about people wanting to be so certain, people being adamant about facts. And my childhood gives me an insight into, or I think it does, into why people are so vehemently attached to their own opinions. And it's sort of like this. When I know something is true and you question it, I'm not threatened. Like, we can discuss it together and maybe maybe you'll see what I'm seeing, or maybe we'll each clarify the other's view and together we'll see things a little bit more clearly. Or maybe you'll cling very strenuously to your opposition of something I know to be true, and I'll be sorry, and it'll probably, lame the conversation a little, but it won't threaten me. I'll still know it's true. If Jesus says to you, how do you know? I mean, if anybody says to you, how do you know Jesus is Lord? You'll think, well, I'll try and help you see that. But at the end of this conversation, I'll still know Jesus is Lord. I don't have to get head up about it, right? Well, my childhood doesn't, really merit a whole lot of looking into, but my dad was what's the word? He was a relativist. He was there's another term for him. I can't remember what it is. At any rate, I have a very loving mother and I love my siblings, but it wasn't a secure childhood in any way. It was in many ways very, what's the word I want? Threatened, It was an unpleasant thing. And it was largely unpleasant because Daddy didn't recognize any reality beyond whatever he made up. So our reality is whatever the meanest person in the room says it is, right? Or the meanest person who's Daddy, basically. But that was genuinely what I thought was real. That the universe doesn't have the idea of objective reality was repugnant to me because the only reality I had been offered was whatever Daddy said it was, under threat. So I grew up without it. I wasn't thinking, well, let's go find the truth. That would be nice. I was simply thinking that human interactions were interactions of competition and force, and whoever had command of the greatest coercion named what the rules were. When you believe that, when you get the chance, you get older, you make up your own story, your own reality. And that's the one that you cling to. And your friends are the people who either have similar realities. We can all think of instances we know, people whose life choices are bound to a falsehood. And they make friends with other people who will support that falsehood. And there are other friends of the people who maybe don't support that falsehood, but have their own falsehood. And we all just, I'm okay, you're okay, right? But what that means is you can't have a sense of humor. You can't have a sense of proportion. You can't stand to be threatened. That's why Daddy was so mean, because his reality wasn't real. Real reality didn't hold it up. So he felt constantly threatened. And I think, when you back up enough and you say, I didn't make the world, but it's evident that somebody big and powerful and loving, that all beauty and goodness and truth come from somebody. And then you meet that somebody. And you realize he's been trying to meet you. He knows you, and he's been trying to get you to notice him. You can get to a very safe place. And you think, well, whatever's true, it's going to be okay. It's all good.
How old were you when you saw that there was more to a father?
I went to college I went to a Catholic college, and I had the interesting experience of meeting, being in long-term contact with a bunch of young people for whom there were three things I didn't recognize. First, when you had a conversation with them, they clearly thought there was something called truth that you were supposed to be figuring out. And that was my first glimmer that there might be something objectively true.
Totally foreign to you.
Totally foreign.
Totally foreign.
Totally foreign. They were
Isn't
also
that interesting. I read Hillbilly Elegy, J.D. Vance's book, and I thought, oh my gosh, this is the weirdest. Do people really have this experience?
Yeah.
And Beth's response was, That's my life. And I went, are you kidding me?
It ends with some sort of
A
questionnaire.
That's right.
And he's reading it to me to show me just how awful the book is. And I kept waiting for him.
The book is great.
The book is great.
It's a phenomenal book about an introduction to a world that I was totally outside of my experience.
And he's reading it to me, this questionnaire at the end. I'm sitting going, I'm waiting for him to get to the bad part. And he gets to the end, and I'm like, and? Like, when are we getting to the bad part? I can't remember where we were.
I'm sorry.
No, that's all right. So these kids, they obviously thought there was something called truth. Again, I thought of that as a power play, but I was interested. So they thought there was truth. They were chased. That was a new experience for me because people in the world don't treat other human beings as sacred in that way. And they were happy. And I had never seen happiness like that. Just the content, the quiet content of security. I am loved. The world is good.
Real joy.
Yeah. And I thought, these people are loony. And I was really turned off by the fact that they were all religious. I'm like, they're loony and they're religious. Two things, like, I don't get it. But day after day, I'd think, yeah, but what have I got? You know, like I could go jump under a bus. That seems like the logical thing to do at this, you know, like eventually in a life like this. Or I could see what they've got. So I really did I jumped aboard ship because their bark was floating and mine was sinking. And I thought, fake it till you make it. It was beautiful. I could see that their myth, their, you know, self-delusion was beautiful. And that, I think, was that, you know, I wonder how many people have this experience. Wow. In the end, Bishop Robert Barron says, you can argue about the truth. You can argue about what's good. But beauty is kind of incontrovertible. And in the end, that's very convincing because beauty couldn't happen on accident. Mm-hmm. Beauty... Like, you try and make beauty happen on accident. Go into your bedroom and start throwing things around. Right. Beauty won't happen on accident.
It cannot evolve.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
And so that, for me, was utterly convincing. I can remember being in Colorado in the mountains and looking up at the stars and thinking, gee whiz, that can't be an accident. You know?
And it hit you square.
Yeah.
So that was in college.
Yeah.
When did you guys meet?
My first day of college.
Really? Okay. Was he in the loony bin?
He was.
I was.
He was a senior.
I was going to daily mass and had these great friends, and
he was a senior, and I was a freshman, and he was a drama major, and he was a phenomenal actor. I was just, I could sit and watch him for hours, and he was this pain in the neck who said, you know, I go to daily mass. You want to see me? That's where you can see me. So we didn't see each other that much. We'd have dinner together after
I was
after
in
mass.
rehearsal a lot.
Right, he was busy.
Theater, right. Yeah.
And so I got exposed to the beauty of the Catholic liturgy. Mm-hmm. People, you know, you sometimes hear it called smells and bells, meaning incense and bells. But it was beautiful and intentional, and you hear the word of God proclaimed as though it's the word of God. And I thought, well, for a lie, this looks really good.
Wow. So you met in college.
Yeah.
When did you get married?
So Beth, she was a freshman. I left and did professional theater for a while. And I think we were kind of waiting. Beth would say we were waiting on me, but we were waiting on, I was waiting on you to get out of school. I mean, there was that. And waiting for God's timing and stuff like that. So we ended up getting married very soon after you graduated.
Shawn.
The next.
Right. Shawn did
December.
love being single. He was a very good single guy.
Love being single.
He was good at. He loved the minimalism of it. But we got married pretty close after I got out of school.
So how many kids total?
8.
8. Okay.
8 and one in heaven.
Yes, that's right.
Really?
Yeah.
Can I ask about that?
Oh, most people have one or two of those. Yeah, we lost a little girl between our second daughter and our last baby. I was 45, I think, when our last baby was born. We have 8 spread over 21 years. So it was what the Lord sent.
Wow.
Yeah.
There's something, I'm only 48, And
Just a baby.
the older I know. I'm still, there's still moisture back there. But the older I get, we have a few up there as well.
Mm-hmm.
And now that, Pop is home, heaven gets a lot closer when you have, loved
Somebody
ones up
there.
We had a woman, kind of an odd bird, who
At our church.
and I don't remember the whole story.
I can't remember why she did that.
But one of the things, she came up to us and she said she had a dream about us. And she said, "Who's the third girl?"
Right.
Because we only have 2 girls. She said, "Who's the third girl?" And we said, "Don't know." And she said that...
It's about 4 years after we got that baby, and she described her as a 4-year-old.
Right. And she said that girl told her to tell us that anything we want, just ask.
Just pray.
Isn't that beautiful?
Wow. Did you give her a name?
Madeline Pia Rosemary.
Madeline.
I knew I wasn't going to have very many more babies. I had to use up all the rest of my names. Madeline Pia Rosemary. Yeah.
Wow.
But that really did. You're absolutely right. That does bring heaven closer. Again, we were just at a conference, and my oldest son and I were on stage, and we were talking about the future and what are your dreams and stuff like that for your family and stuff like that. And my dream is that we are all together. It's great whatever we do on earth and everything, but I want to have a really big party in heaven, and I want everybody to be there, all my grandkids and kids and everybody else. That's my dream.
When about a year or so after Dad passed, and that's 14 years now. Wow. Excuse me. About a year after that, we were matched with a little baby girl in Fort Wayne, Indiana.
Wow. Mm-hmm.
And we packed up our 2 kids and we drove out there. And they had told us that she had some heart issues. They didn't tell us how extensive they were. And we walked in to the hospital, and someone snagged us and put us, in a room. And then a doctor came later and told us that she had died. That I think the night before or the morning of or something.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And her name is Amelia. And one of my regrets is that we didn't. They just told us to go home.
Yeah.
And one of my bigger regrets in life is that I didn't push back and say, "Hey, can I have her body?"
Yes,
Right, that's my baby.
Absolutely.
That's-
That's right.
And also to meet the birth mom.
Yeah.
And just to be there and just get to know her
Right.
and we didn't know any better, and so we just drove
I
home.
I think we have to have these experiences periodically where we really think, I should have done differently, but then that affects us for the rest of our lives.
Yeah.
That we don't do things like that again. We
don't
do
have
push
prep
back.
for that.
Yeah,
There's
we
no-
do push back
Right.
the next time, or we do, and I do think God, we look at it as regret. I really blew it that time. I think there is something to that. I mean, we rehab, but I really do think God's prepping you for the next, for the more important time.
I also think that those happen because, we were talking earlier about specialization, institutionalization. They happen because we're not doing things on a human scale. We're not interacting as people with other people, but people with institutions. And that's a situation that all of us are, in our little ways, working to correct. I was talking to one of my boys just a couple of days ago, and we were talking about things that you can't change. We look at the way this country, the physical reality of this country is treated, the soil, the land is treated, and we look at the way people eat, and that's a huge problem. And I would say it can't be fixed. Now, we know some wonderful people who farm very well, provide top quality food for a lot of other people, and are good to the soil. And in 30 years, they haven't converted a ton of other people to farming like they're farming. But they've made a dent, right? And we're at the opposite end of the spectrum, helping individual families step out of the conventional food system and grow their own food. Now, if somebody said, we need to fix this situation tomorrow, we just need, or next year, we need better food for everybody, they couldn't make it happen. So it's impossible. But what we can't do as a group, we can do as individuals. It's like conversion. We can't convert the world, but the world can convert the world. One heart at a time. And, if enough people say, well, that's how I want to eat, most people can make that happen for themselves on some level. Yeah. So it's doable, but it's not doable institutionally. Your institution didn't offer you that personal contact with your child, but you'll never let anybody do that to you again.
Pop had a way of distilling, wisdom down into just little phrases.
Those are our prophets.
Oh my goodness. The higher you get on the ladder, the more you can see. Mm-hmm. Are you nuts? The older I get, the more I realize how unbelievably wise that is. Mm-hmm. Yeah. And he would often say, Marlon, don't ever forget you're just one guy. But don't ever forget you're one guy.
Yeah, right.
And it's exactly what you're saying.
Yes,
that we, let's not think too highly of ourselves here,
right, Right.
But let's also not forget that we can make a dent.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
And
we can change. That's absolutely right.
Right.
Yeah.
And that impact, and all of a sudden, a family, changes, and it starts to change a community, and then the community changes a county, and all of a sudden, it grows into something, big. I was going to go someplace else, but there it is. So one thing that I'm starting to think of, this whole AI thing, and I know this is a huge can of worms, I get it, but let me just share this and then just ask for your feedback. I was watching a podcast where a guy was talking about, this whole huge change of quantum. And I don't even understand, the basics of what quantum is, but he was saying it is millions of times more than our current, fastest computing. And the host said, what in the world should we do? And the guy, just very, very quickly said, talk to your neighbor, get to know your friends, have a real conversation, talk, get to know people. And don't do it through the phone and through the Zoom and all. Do it with face to face. And it just reminded me that AI, no matter how unbelievably intelligent and fast it is, it's only working on its inputs, and input is still human. So I don't even know what that means. I just know that it's over my head. So anyway, feel free to weigh in.
Well, I was laughing because AI, when you keep cows, means something else.
Very true.
I was thinking, yeah, AI is a problem. I really do. I really think bulls do a better job. But
that's also real community.
Right.
I think that with things like that, it is a little bit hard to just ignore it. On the other hand, that's kind of been our response to it. I mean, it's not affected us very much that we know of. And it certainly doesn't affect how my potatoes grow in the ground or how I milk the cow or any of those things. So we don't think about it a whole lot.
I think the other piece of it is that the more you understand the complexity of the natural world, and you look at how we're farming, how we're feeding ourselves, you look at the medical system, the more you can watch any societal change and think, we're teetering on a razor's edge, right? I'm not really worried about where AI is going to be in 20 years. Maybe it's something I should worry about, but when as Shawn says, we don't know much and we're not encountering it. But I do actually think that a country of people whose soil is dead, whose food comes from 1,500 miles away, and who are on average on, 6 or 7 drugs apiece. And, let's look at obesity rate, diabetics.
My entertainment comes, virtually all my entertainment comes through wires.
Right. When you look at that, I'm not scared of that culture because that culture is so close to imploding. I'm not anxious that it should do so, but I believe it will. So then I think you guys can tell me about your projects and I'll think, well, if you're around to accomplish that, maybe I'll worry about it, but I'm not sure you'll be around to accomplish it.
Especially when you dump into that whole mix the plummeting birth rate.
Yes.
Yes, right. You put your finger on it. Is that it doesn't matter what metric we're looking at. They all look like human obsolescence. Those mistaken plans don't make me feel threatened.
And I think partly, too, is as you launch, and Beth has when she speaks to women often at women's conferences, one of the big questions is, how do we have the courage to do what we do that's
to break with the culture completely.
Right. And for us, having now done it for 40 years, our 40th anniversary is coming right up, we are seeing that the payoff is huge. I mean, there was no birth control, there was no, that we used, so we just had the kids that God sent us. Oh my gosh, that's what everybody should do. We live in the country. Oh my gosh, that's what everybody should do. We homeschool. Oh my gosh, that's what everybody should do. And it's should everybody do it? Yeah, I think everybody should do it. That's hard to say. On the other hand, we have had such the fruit of that has been so good and so rich that I'm so glad that we. And why were we making these choices? Because we, as Beth says, we were taking the next good step.
Yeah.
We didn't know where we were going with this. As somebody was telling us recently, that there's no manual, for this.
There's no playbook for the way things have been going. For anybody, really, there's no playbook.
Right. But what's the next good thing to do? The next good thing is to not put them in school. The next good thing is to move to the country. The next good thing is to add on an addition because we have too many kids.
Next thing is to plant a tomato
Yeah, right.
But I think we're very effectively distracted from that next good thing. Like, I'll plant a tomato next year. This year, I just have to. What are the things that used to distract us? A better car, a higher paycheck, newer
sports,
clothes.
I think there's a lot of things like that.
Being asked to the right parties. I don't know what. I don't know what.
This episode of the Plain Values podcast is sponsored by Kentucky Lumber. Derek Geyer and his family are an incredible group of people. Derek told me a story a few months ago that absolutely rings true with what I want our family to be about and who we want to care about. Derek was telling me a story about his family showing sheep, and they do a thing in their hometown where the night before, I think, the main competition, they bring kids that have special needs in and give them a chance to walk and show the sheep, along with the kids who are actually showing the sheep. Derek told me that there was a young man whose arms were waving rather wildly, and nobody of the kids that were showing sheep chose him to walk with them. And so he was last and he was left out. And Derek said, Marlon, he said, I was so amazed to watch our son Joe go over and pick this little guy. And he said his parents reached out, this little guy's parents reached out the night before he was telling me the story with tears in their eyes, and they were so grateful to Joe and to Derek that their son would do that and make much of their son. Guys, that is the kind of company, that is the kind of family, that is the kind of value-based company that I want to do business with. And if you need anything as far as wood, flooring, anything at all, trim, please give them a call. You will not be disappointed. Derek and his team are fantastic. You can find them at drywallhaters.com. Can we talk about the house fire?
Oh, yeah. Yeah. One of
That
the
happened
best things that happened in my
2 years
life.
ago.
2 years ago, right?
Yeah.
You just said one of the best things that happened in your
Oh my
life.
gosh, fabulous! I knew it on the day that I came back.
did?
I did. I don't know that my wife would necessarily agree with this, but I was driving to go pick up one of my sons at the airport because we were getting ready. The whole family was getting ready to go to the Rory Feek Homestead Heritage Conference. So we were all going. And I had gone to one of our sons had flown into Pittsburgh, so I'd gone to go get him, and I got a phone call that said, "Don't worry, I don't think the house is burned a whole lot."
I just said, you may not be able to get up the hill because the fire trucks are in the way, but we're all fine.
Yes. So in any event, as I was walking we parked down below at our B&B, and then I walked over to the house. And from the angle I was walking at it, you didn't see very much. But as we kept moving around, it was getting worse and worse. It was clear that the fire had done a lot. No, I knew that my sons were going to rebuild. I knew that they were going to help us rebuild. We had a 100-year-old house. And it was a house we loved, and we would have been happy in that house. We would have continued to be happy in that house. But this was a great opportunity because I knew that the kids were going to rebuild it. I knew that we were insured, so I knew that the finances would be okay. I did not know how expensive it was going to be, and there was some very generous
There were two
GoFundMes
fundraisers that were just beyond generous for us.
So in any event, that has gotten us through. But they did rebuild it, and I have an architect, I have a stonemason, I have a timber framers, I have electricians, I have plumbers, I have the whole thing. And it's not just the boys, it's the girls as well. And it became this great educational experience as all of the kids, one of them's a member of the Timber Frame Guild. So he taught everybody else how to timber frame. And they started the timbers came in, they arrived on January 1st. By January 17th, the timber frame structure was completed.
Get out of here.
They had done that all.
17 days.
They had cut it all, and they had locked it all together.
And we don't work on Sundays.
And we don't work on Sundays. But it was so exciting to watch that happen. Then it was, the rest of the build. And the build did take a year and a half or so to do. But they really were very careful about how they built. And it is a beautiful.
It is a work of art.
Yeah.
I will never forget. I will never forget what our neighbor Ivan said. And Ivan is an Amish furniture craftsman, now farmer. He's great. He knows what he's talking about because he built.
That's right. He
built furniture.
Yeah. Well, and he builds his little houses.
He does.
Yeah.
And he looked at me and he said, "Marlon," he said, "I've seen a lot of timber framing. I've never seen anything with this detail and this quality in a house." He said, "I've rarely seen it in this good in furniture, let alone a house."
The boys would start to cut something, and if it didn't fit exactly right, that's not me. I would get it into place, and I said, "Done, finished." That's not.
So they would pry it back apart.
Pull it back apart.
Which that is, and I believe you told us that you guys built it all green.
Yes.
So as
it
it's
is
drying,
super tight, locked together.
Never come.
That's right.
I mean, it would.
That's right. That's right. Yeah.
Unbelievable. Well,
I had a different perspective as a house. I came home to my house fire, and in the seconds, as you turn into your driveway and you realize, oh, my house is going to go, before my mind could formulate fears, I could see my children on the lawn. And at that point, you've had two things put in front of you, like there's my house and there's my family. And they can't even exist on the same scale. So I was really we all just sat on the lawn and watched the house burn. It's traumatic because you've lived in it for 25 years.
all the memories, all the little things.
and the homelessness. I mean, we had a B&B, so I knew where we were going to live, but like we all have this nest that's the place we go back to, and it wasn't there anymore. But I've thought about it a lot since then, and it becomes evident very quickly if you think about it, that if the Lord wants to give you a gift like a new house that your whole family can have as a project, first he has to get rid of the old one. And when you stop and think about it, losing your house is, I don't mean it's nothing, like let's put it in perspective. It really is just nothing. It's a pile of sticks, some stuff that you had collected. And if anything really bad happened, you'd know right away that house was not a big deal.
It was, keep it in perspective.
Right. And we're still working on it. We will be for the next 10 years probably. But we have had a gift we wouldn't even have known we could ask for. Lord, can we work for 2 years on a family project in which every one of us is...
I think that's part of it, is that every summer was the summer of the barn or the summer of the
We'd
build.
have a project every year, and you
every year.
worked on it.
And we were running out of those things. You know, my children, who was still at home were the 4 youngest. We just didn't have as many
Only the
big
3
projects.
youngest. Bud's married.
I guess that's right. Mm-hmm. But he was very active. He was a very big part of the thing. So my oldest was able to get away from his work and come back and be our general contractor. And one of the things I loved, too, was that he didn't really know the 4 youngest as well.
When your kids are spread over 21 years, the oldest are a generation away from the youngest.
And it was funny. At one point, I said to my youngest, I said to him, "What is Luke to you?" And he didn't even understand
Luke
what
is
I
our
was
oldest.
asking. Yeah. He said, what do you mean? I said, well, what's the relationship of Luke? And he said, well, he's your brother, right? And I said, oh, no. He's your brother. And he went, yes, he did not
How long
know.
ago did that happen?
About 10 years ago. He was about 7. He was 7 or 8.
That's amazing.
But he's the same age. There's only a year between our youngest and our oldest son's first. So they just
Uncle,
run together.
nephew,
yes, right.
right.
And they knew that they were uncle and nephew, but it had never occurred to Raymond to do the math on that. Right.
Wow.
But
he's your brother.
Yes. But that crew, those 4 youngest became Luke's crew. And the playfulness, Beth had raised
mutual
them.
appreciation, too.
Yeah, Beth had been the primary educator, obviously, as mom almost always is in a homeschool setting. And so she had given them all the same books and the same stuff. So any of the 4 youngest would start a quote from something, and the oldest one would know what it was, too. And it was delightful to see this play out as the oldest got to know his 4 younger siblings. And but I love working with my kids. It is my favorite thing to do. And we had 2 years of, I did not light the fire. I but if I had known it was going to be this good, I might have lit the fire.
Wait, you said light. I thought you said like.
No, I loved the fire. I did not light the fire.
I get it now. Okay. So you guys have already answered all the questions that I have down about what happened, like what you felt, like what goes through your mind when you see that this is our house on fire. Yeah. And then these beautiful stories that come out of that, and your family and the community. Was it not? I remember I was at the Homestead Festival when Rory
I remember you were.
got up and said, hey, by the way, and there are, 4,000 people there? 5,000 people there? And he said, hey, our friends Shawn and Beth and he goes down the row, and they raised a chunk.
They did.
It was a big chunk.
They raised a chunk.
Right, absolutely.
I think, and every opportunity we get, we try and share this. It made the difference between having a house, rebuilding a house together, basic stick construction, get it up there, get it roughed in and get in, and the gift of our time together. And that was what it really gave us, was the time to put together all of our knowledge and all of our mutual time in that house and our knowledge of how it had been used. It was an old farmhouse. It had burned once before we ever got there. And it was like so many houses that were built without plumbing and electricity and then had them put in, it had been damaged a lot in the process. And we had made it do things for 25 years that it wasn't really intended to do, or it couldn't do anymore, or it couldn't do well, like managed. Like there were no good food storage spaces. We needed a cheese cave and a root cellar. We needed places to put canned goods. We needed places to hang, cured meats. And we jury-rigged all that. We had to be able to process milk in there. We jury-rigged that. Now, with all of that history in the house and all of our knowledge of how you had to step around this and, hold the hook on that just so we could go in and build the thing as it should have been built to function. And it's worked beautifully. I mean, we're in it. We've been using it as we designed it to be used. And it's a joy, the way health is a joy. When you move around and you just feel good, it's a joy to use the house.
But apart from the house, what happened as people came around us, the community, and then the homestead, I really began to feel the homestead family. And that homestead family is so much bigger than our local community. It's huge now. We speak at conferences all over the country, and these are lovely people.
The homesteading movement before 2017, 2018, such as it was, and my parents were sort of fringe homesteaders when I was a kid.
There's a lot of hippies.
Right. It was. We spoke at those events. So we began speaking at homestead events in like 2010. And for those first years, we made sure that at some point in a talk our Christianity showed, but it never showed at the beginning or they'd have checked us off right there. Like, don't need to listen to these people. They're going to be Christians. It still is in certain circles really about commercial production of organic food for sale. So it's not really a family or even a community thing. It really is. It's an industry thing. Nothing against it, but it had that collection of individuals rather than community feel. At every event, you felt like, well, there are a lot of people coming together for something, but they're not really being joined into a mass, and they'll all go home and forget it. And then about 2017, 2018, and I would say Amy Fuel and the Homesteaders of America people deserve a big chunk of this. Amy Fuel said, I'm going to have an event, and she got Joel Salatin to come. He's her neighbor within a couple of hours. And a lot more people showed up than she expected. I think she thought, 100, 150, and she had 500. And she planned it again. That year we were there, and I think that was 2018. And it was bigger. And what was apparent very quickly was that these were different people. These were Christian families coming together, feeling a call. And I remember when we started to hear people in 2021, that was HOA, had an event that year when most events were still closed. And people we'd say, well, so how'd you get into homesteading? And they say, well, in 2018, God told me to move my family to the country. Or in 2019, I had a dream to take my family to the country. Now, Marlon, we're talking about going
over
from...
over and over again.
We're talking about going from a very tiny demographic, that tiny subset of homesteaders that were Christian,
right,
to lots and lots and lots of people at Homesteaders of America, at the Homestead Festival.
Ozarks.
Ozark Homestead. All these homestead things are popping up, and they're packed with Christian families who will tell you, well, 3 years ago I bought a place in the country and I left my accounting firm in Boston because I'm supposed to live in the country and be family with my family. These aren't preppers. That's a totally different thing.
Right.
And they're not running away. They're running to. They're just people who felt.
And they're not trying to make a lot of money.
That's right. Well, and that's the big one.
It's not microgreens.
That gets us right to the heart of what we're talking about, which is God made a nature that wants to feed you and give you healthy. There aren't dollars growing on trees. There's food and health growing on trees. And these people, instead of saying, this year, I like to picture myself, instead of in my nice suit in my nice office, I like to picture myself in my overalls on my tractor in the country, but that my bank account's going to look the same. Yeah. And that's how the homestead movement, a certain part of the homestead movement used to look. People who they weren't envisioning changing their life or their lifestyle. They were envisioning changing their garb and their setting, right? I want to be a homesteader now. Just the way you might say, last year I was into, rowing on the Potomac, and this year I'm going to.
It's more of like a
a
goal
mountain
to be
climber.
checked off or
Yes.
something.
Something
Right.
like that.
Yeah.
So-
It was a
Yes.
fashion statement almost.
Right.
But then let's go back to 2017, 2018. And guys, I've heard the same stories.
Yeah.
I'll bet you have.
I'm thinking of a friend that I met in Idaho from California, and he called me a couple months later and said, "Marlon, I'm looking at 2 places around the country. Would you add anything?" And I told him about Middle Tennessee, and he said, "That's one of them that's on our list." Guess where he ended up?
Yeah.
Middle Tennessee.
I gave him a hug a couple days ago at the
Yeah,
Homestead Fest
Right.
because that's where they moved.
Right.
Yep.
And those stories are everywhere.
Isn't it
right.
funny?
Absolutely
That's right.
everywhere.
That's
so where did that come from? Did the Lord simply say to a whole, huge plethora of families, it's time to go?
I think so. That's what I think.
But why?
He'll show us.
Well,
I mean,
I think one of the things that we definitely are seeing is how fragile the current system
Yes.
is. You cannot count on food, as Beth said, being traveling 150 miles and that continuing.
1,500.
These exercises or these ways of farming, these ways of doing this. This is a really young experiment. It's only happened since World War II.
well,
or
and
so.
it really, I mean, if you want to take a good close up on modern ag, what you're seeing isn't something that we've tried for 75 years. It's something that we began a breaks earlier than that, but after World War II, it was a decision of the government, hand in hand with big industry, people with names like Rockefeller and Kellogg and Ford, that our country's agriculture was going to become industrialized. And it was enacted in fiat. You can go back and look at your history books. Don't look at your history books. Do your research yourself and find out that was a choice. And it's a choice that has never worked. That's why we are where we are. Because each step we took, chemicalizing, mechanizing,
And then subsidizing it.
subsidized.
That's
Thank
the
you
only
very
reason
much.
that it's
Yeah.
continuing. But as Beth says, it's never really worked.
It's never worked.
We keep
Every
doing
year there's a new bandage.
Yep.
Every year there's a
Right.
new,
Yeah.
well, this
This
is
will
failing,
fix it.
Try that. And what's interesting, Morgan, is that in I'm going to say 41, but it might have been 40, the yearbook for the Department of Ag in the U.S., and the yearbook is sort of this collection of studies and essays and things written by many people in the Department of Ag and some people not in the department about American ag for that year. That year, the book was entitled Grass. And it was one long, big, fat book of a whole lot of people explaining that ecological health, and there is no agricultural health without ecological health depended upon those parts of the planet which are not naturally going to go to trees being mostly kept in grass because grass is endlessly productive. It's harvestable many times during the year, all year long, and properly managed, it makes its own soil and fertility. Every tillage act that we engage in decreases soil fertility. And prior to not very long ago, like your great-grandfather, people knew that the only way to put that back was to put it under animals again, put it in grass, graze it, it'll gain in fertility. So in 1941, the USDA's statement about American agriculture was that we should put great swaths of cropland back into grass.
Okay. So
And in 46, we were plowing
that's what I was
fence row
going
to
to say.
fence row.
That's what I was going to say. Your grandpa lived through the Dust Bowl.
Yeah.
What is okay? So this whole thing, I've been studying epigenetics and how trauma can
Yes, yes.
go generations deep,
Yes.
right? The whole thing of the Bible verse that talks about things are passed.
yeah.
He
To
means
the
it.
seventh generation.
He means
That's
it.
not vindictive. That's fact.
It's
That's
factual.
Right. That's right.
Do you feel like that his living through the Dust Bowl, literally in Oklahoma, when that whole thing just totally fascinates me to no end, because they tilled everything under and it all blew away.
That's right.
It all blew away. It blew into New York City, for crying out loud. Were you alive when he was alive? Did you ever talk to him about it?
No, didn't ever talk to him about that. I don't think.
Grandpa, you mean?
Yeah, I don't know that I ever talked to Grandpa about it. Yes, he was alive. I was alive when he was alive.
What did your dad say about it, though? Your dad remembered watching his dad.
Yeah, he did. He did remember, and we would hear stories every once in a while that the rain would be coming in Oklahoma, right where they were. There's the South Canadian River, isn't that interesting? The South Canadian River in Oklahoma. But in any event, they would watch the rain come, hit the South Canadian River, and then slide down. So it didn't hit, and watch. The story is watching Grandpa cry as the rain didn't come that direction. I was not. My agricultural background started, I guess, when Dad bought a farm a quarter of a mile down the road from where he had grown up, and so we would go out there weekends and farm and stuff like that.
You kept a big garden and you kept a lot of cows.
The big thing, the big change is that my dad's, there were 11 kids, 2-room house, and they all became professionals.
They all left
They
the
all
farm.
became medical.
You're kidding.
No, became medical, pharmacy. Now, many of them had land and they did some farming, and Dad did some pretty good farming.
Yeah, and when he retired to be a farmer.
That's right. But they all said, we're not living that same way. That's
Yeah,
right.
right,
That's right.
right.
That's right. And that's the break. And the Amish are doing it now, a generation later, where they're not passing on their agriculture. And so the Amish are bringing us in to speak at their conferences. And we think, why are you bringing us in to speak at your conferences?
We thought we were comic relief.
But it's because it's not getting passed on. And what we're trying to do in our book, which is right there, The Independent Farmstead, our book is an attempt to capture that knowledge that was passed on this way, orally. And that got broken. And it got broken with my dad. My mom knew how to do piece chickens. Dad knew how to farm. They all knew how to do all that. But that did not really get passed on to the next generation. And again, the same thing is happening.
I think it's
in the
worth
Amish
pointing out,
world.
too, that mom and dad, your mom and dad, would have, as recently as that, they would have actually learned from their parents mostly some fairly sustainable things, like 7-year rotations and putting things back into pasture to restore fertility. So when their generation, and I would say partly traumatized by things like the Depression, although that was Dad more, the Dust Bowl person, because Mom Dougherty was in Modesto, California, and wasn't the Depression didn't bother her that much. But in 1940, 44, 45, 46, as we were coming to the end of the war, the United States had industrialized in order to provide war materiel for the winning of World War II, if you can call that war if you can say it was ever won.
Right.
And coming out of the war, we had the infrastructure now for heavy equipment, chemicals, and meals ready to eat, and we just big industry wasn't going to lose the stranglehold it had gotten on the U.S. economy. So from 1940-41, saying all that land needs, or much of that land needs to go back into grass, we went to, no, we're just going to make mega farms, manage them with machines, and everybody's going to be blessed by moving into town and eating TV dinners. Mm-hmm. And that's when that gap
that has
up.
not changed very much, in the sense that our son just several years ago.
We have a son who's a veterinarian.
Right. And he graduated from Ohio State University, and he would come back and tell us, here's the model for future farming. And it was horrific.
Right. Big bubble, methane capturing bubble, everything mechanized. That's been a dream of the industrial ag sector for Wendell Berry was writing about it in the 70s, maybe 80s, but a long time ago. And I laugh. I think you want to make God laugh, tell him your plans. That's a plan. I don't think they won't. I think the thing that's missing is that we sit here and we feel in ourselves that biology is frail, it's fragile, it's prone to problems, Like we have to feed it and tend it, and we still know it's going to die. And that's what industrial ag overlooks completely. The reason that the average dairy cow today is slaughtered after 1 or 2 lactations, as opposed to having maybe 15 or 20, right? It takes a lot to raise a dairy cow. You don't slaughter her after 1 or 2 lactations if you don't have to. Why do they? She doesn't want to breed back. We've got like a 40% breed back rate in dairy cattle. Well, where did that come from? Well, it came from in 1920, 30, 40, as we began ramping up production and offering them grain and then throwing their metabolism off and then offering them 15 now, I think, different kinds of additive into their food, not additives into their food, therapies, right? And where has it gotten us? To dairy cows that produce, 8, 9, 10, 12 gallons a day for 1 or 2 lactations. Yeah. And then they won't breed back and they become McDonald's hamburgers.
Yeah.
What a silly game to be playing.
And what we're looking at the other side of farming, which is that fertility keeps coming back. It keeps getting better. What could you do that you've got this bucket of milk and it's going to keep coming every day, twice a day, the richest, best food, and all you have to do is put an animal on grass. You don't have to give it grain.
You have to manage her on grass.
You have to manage her on grass. But that whole pattern is so beautiful, and we're seeing it all over our farm. Our son, my brother came to visit us for a little bit, and he looked at our potatoes, and he said, "Man, those potatoes." He said, "Where are all the potato bugs?" I said, "If you have good soil, if you have nutritious soil, the potato bugs aren't there." And he said, "I didn't know you could have potato bugs. Potatoes without potato bugs." Yeah. I didn't either. Yeah. But it's exactly what happens. And when we started out, our soil was terrible. We were killing potato bugs all the time. But we've just watched this through the nutrition, the soil change.
The soil fertile,
Yeah, it's amazing.
Well, and to go back to the most asked question right now and for the last couple of years is women who say, often with tears in their eyes, "How do you know it's okay? How do I know that if I keep making these choices for my life and for my children's lives, that's going to be okay?" And the answer is in that idea that if I take a cow and I move her over grass in ways that imitate nature, if I will simply show up, pay attention, move a little white string, move the cow, milk her, that every day the soil will be better, the grass will be better, the cow will be better, and there will be another bucket of milk.
And you're better.
And so we're better.
You're better.
When I was in high school, I remember learning the principle of entropy in physics. And entropy says, well, systems move from more complex to less complex. Well, that's fine if you're talking about a computer or a car or maybe a star system, right? In the sense of things maybe wind down. It isn't true of life. Life, well managed, gets more complex. And the evidence of that is in any 2-acre pasture that somebody is managing with a single dairy cow for milk and soil. When I use it, it gets more complex. It gets more fruitful. There's more soil. It's not moving from more complex to less complex. It's going in the opposite direction. What's the input? The human obedience and love and
not cleverness,
acquiescence to God's order.
Cleverness has kind of got us, and maybe that's not the right word, but cleverness is a way of kind of getting around God's pattern. I'm better than that.
That's how we use it anyway.
That's right.
Because it's very clever to capture water high, put a pipe on it, and put pressurized water into your house, and that's nice.
Right.
So that's a kind of cleverness, I think, that we use legitimately. But we substitute the cleverness of, say, the Haber-Bosch process, which lets us capture nitrogen out of the atmosphere and make ammonium nitrate that we can shove under a plant. And for a brief time, it'll be very green. but we'll kill our soil,
Yep.
right?
And we have unintended consequences.
Yep.
As Will Harris says.
Does all this not? It points back to when you're talking about the industrialization and big ag. They are coming at the grass and the land and their worldview is rooted in arrogance and just
They're
this
coming
massive
at
pride.
their
I
fellow
was-
men with the same arrogance.
I was just at I'm a member of the Soil and Water, supervisor of Soil and Water. It's a challenge for me because their methods are not our methods. And we were just talking about the farmer who is out there and what can we as a Soil and Water help them to farm better. And she said, the person who was talking about it, and she does the ag, she said, I've been trying to get them to rotationally graze. And this guy says, I'm not rotationally grazing. I'm not rotationally grazing. That's just off the question. I mean, that's
Was
not
this one
even,
of the members of the Soil and Water Conservation District Board who said, I won't rotate?
Oh, no. This was somebody that Wendy was going out to a farmer that she was
Oh, and
going
he
out
said,
to try and
he said,
help.
save your breath, I'm not going to do it.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that. There may be a good way of doing this. I am not going there. And I think, what do you do with that? You know, if someone is so tied into this is the way this is the way my dad did it, and I am not interested in a better.
Even conventional
doing it.
grazing of that kind it can only go back to like 1886 in the invention of barbed wire. The idea that you can own grazing animals and not manage the grass they're on is that young. And yet, our arrogance says I shouldn't have to take that care. I shouldn't have to work that hard.
Yeah, man. 2 more questions. What are you guys reading right now?
I've been reading a very interesting book called The Church and Farming, where it's a Catholic priest who this is writing about the same time that Wendell Berry is writing about that the systems are getting worse and worse and worse, and he is seeing this. Pope Leo XIII saw these changes that were happening as people moved more and more into the city. He was seeing that it wasn't incompatible completely, but that the life of the family in the city, it's a very different kind of thing. It's harder to make that work. You don't have chores for the children to do, so they have a very different understanding of what work is. And work becomes this thing that you try and get out of, as opposed to this ennobling thing. So it's been very interesting to read. I can't remember who wrote that. You probably remember the author.
Is this a Fahey?
It is a Fahey, Father Fahey. That's right.
And I'm reading a book called The Geography of Nowhere by a novelist named Howard Kunstler. What's his first name? Something Howard Kunstler. Kuntzler. And our architect / master our son Thomas is a timber framer. He was a guild timber framer for about 5 years, and then he went to Notre Dame and got his master's in architecture, and now he helps people design human spaces. And I think this was his book. And it's a really interesting, well-written, entertaining, but sort of grim book about the history of the U.S. as a country that didn't have a past and that came into being hand in hand with the Industrial Revolution. Before we were even a country, the people we now call our founding fathers were already aware. We had a serious land use problem that all over this continent, people would arrive, put some seeds in the ground, wear that soil out, move west, wear that soil out, move west. And so they were already addressing at that time the need for a different kind of agriculture. Well, Kunstler is talking about how did we get to where we are right now with really ugly architecture and cities that are held together by superhighway conduits. And there's a whole lot of history in it, and it's a lot of stuff I didn't know. What it does really usefully is it takes the reader who has accepted as sort of not even inevitable, as though we accept our world as though it is the only world. It has always been thus. We even say things like human nature doesn't change, and what we think we're saying is, so now is just like any previous time. Mm-hmm. Well, human nature may not change, but now is not like any previous time because no previous time had the resources that we have, nor the power we have to do things with them. And he's sort of making you think the way you live and the way you do your job and the way you spend your money and shop and whatever aren't inevitable. They are the result of some very recently made choices, much like our agriculture, some very recently made choices that have not been for the betterment of the human being, just as Pope Leo XIII was pointing out, that when families cease to act like families, they stop being families. How do families act? They are of mutual assistance to one another. How much mutual assistance is there between 5 individuals who share a roof and all have different destinations all over the city all day long and don't have meals together? Mm-hmm. Probably not much. Are they still a family? Well, biologically, yes. Maybe economically, yes. But relationally, no. And Kunstler is inviting us to notice that the relationships we have with one another as a society aren't inevitable.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I've been studying, when you go back into Genesis and you see that Noah's sons after the flood started building cities, all of a sudden, in a way, I think it is his, I think it was his great grandson, maybe, and I forget the name now. I'm sorry. Nimrod was the hunter. I think it was him,
he
or
also
maybe
built
one
a
of his
city.
brothers that built all these big cities. Mm-hmm. And I've kind of come to see it as though in building the cities, they were giving God the finger.
Well,
I think they were because God said what? God said, "Go spread out."
Well, and what did he do to Abraham? He took him to a land flowing with milk and honey. So that's the movement.
He took him out of the city.
Out of the city.
Not
cities.
right.
That's right.
And he promised his descendants that land flowing with milk and honey.
So there's this movement out of the city and back to the country, back to that lifestyle. And we really feel like that the land flowing with milk and honey, the cow, bees, the natural life, for us, as we have moved in that direction, how do you know whether you moved in the right direction or not? In hindsight, you say, oh, those were really good choices. And that's exactly what, a land where you're milking the cows and where you're doing that. We just feel like
I think the other way we know that we're moving in the right direction is we receive inner light.
Yeah.
There are moments when you
read the Psalms and suddenly they come alive because you've been living this.
Yes, when you experience the knowledge that you didn't come up with on your own, and it comes out of. This is why I think, for me, you asked about my childhood and how did I become a Christian, and I became a Christian as an act of desperation, which isn't. I mean, that's okay. That's one way, but it has been from It has been for me as an adult, my certainty of God's presence, the intimacy that we experience with our Savior as we walk the Christian path, for me has come. You're damaged if you're raised a relativist. If you have to be in your 20s to figure out there might be something that's true, then you're not working with the same set of equipment. But as I have watched how nature works, and you don't need a PhD in this. In fact, a PhD is probably going to work against you. If you'll get out and believe that believe in a few simple natural principles that somebody can explain to you, and you can go, oh, that makes sense. Yeah, I can see why that would be true. And then you move forward with that. God reveals himself to you in every little tiny thing you see. And it opens you up to the idea that although truth, God's nature, is way bigger than you'll ever understand, it's still knowable. You can know a child looking at his mother doesn't say, oh, there's so much complexity there, I'll never understand her. He just, like she's his, and the child knows her. And that's how you feel about nature. And so you get to a place where you trust because you've had that experience. That's how we have the nerve to do this. And I don't know where I started. It was something you said about how we know.
Got me.
I think we know because God is good and it's really evident. But you have to be there and you have to pay attention. You have to be listening.
Wow. Last question.
Yeah.
How can we pray for you guys?
Well, one of our we're getting ready to go on the Camino, which is a pilgrimage.
The Camino Santiago in Spain.
It ends up where St. James was martyred.
No,
where he was buried. And so we're getting ready to do a 250-mile walk from somewhere in Portugal, Porto in Portugal, to this place. And our prayer is that we have fertility for
our two of our son William and his wife Ashley have been waiting for a baby for 2.5 years now, and we thought this would be a good walk. And so recently I changed my prayer every morning in my breviary, which is sort of a Catholic prayer book. I have a little reminder to pray for Bud and Ashley's baby, and I thought, I'm not praying for one. I'm praying for a whole slew, like babies for Bud and Ashley. So that's our intention, and we would be so excited for lots and lots of people to be, sort of biting the Lord's ear about babies for Bud and Ashley. Yeah. They will make phenomenal parents.
Oh man,
yeah.
Guys, thank you.
Oh, this has been a delight. It's been so much fun.
It's been a pleasure. The only thing that was missing was Lisa. Next time.
Next time. Yeah. She has her hands full.
I'm sure
she does. She does.
Yeah.
Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. It's a pleasure.
This episode is brought to you by Homestead Living magazine. Homestead Living is a monthly print magazine that interviews all the big names in the homesteading world, and they focus and educate in a wonderful way. You can learn more and subscribe at homesteadliving.com.
So hold my hand.
If you got anything out of this podcast, you will probably love Plain Values in print. You can go to plainvalues.com to learn more and check it out. Please like, subscribe, and leave us a review. Guys, love you all. Thanks so much.